Tegan really wanted to join us for some read aloud time. Yes, you did. We're back with The Indian in the Cupboard by Lynn Reed Banks. Chapter 15, Underfloor Adventure. Omri and Patrick decided they must take it in turns to sit up all night with Boone. This was going to be tricky because of light showing under the door, but Omri unearthed the lopsided remains of a candle he made himself from a candle-making kit. We can put it behind the dressing-up crate, then the light won't show. They got into their pajamas. Patrick was supposed to be sleeping on a folding bed, so they got it ready to avoid arousing suspicion. When Omri's mother came in to kiss them goodnight, they were both in bed, apparently reading. The fact that Omri was reading in semi-darkness was nothing unusual. She was always at him about it. "Oh, Omri, why won't you switch your bedside light on? You'll ruin your eyes." "It doesn't work," said Omri promptly. "Yes, it does. Dad fixed it this morning. You know what was wrong with it?" "What?" asked Omri impatiently, wishing for once that she would go. "That wretched rat of Gillen's made a nest under the floorboards and lined it with bits of insulation it gnawed off the wires. It's a wonder it didn't electrocute itself." Omri sat up sharply. "You mean it's got loose?" Her mother gave a lopsided smile. "Where have you been keeping yourself? It's been loose since last night. Haven't you noticed Gillen frantically looking for it? It seems to have taken up residence under your bed." "Under my bed?" Omri yelled, leaping out and dropping to his knees. It's no use looking for it. I mean, right under the floor. Daddy caught a glimpse of it today when he had the boards up, but he couldn't catch it, of course. It's a matter of waiting till it comes out for food and then... But Omri wasn't listening. A rat. That was all they needed. "Mom, we've got to get it. We've got to." "Why? You're not scared of it, are you?" "Me? Scared of that stupid rat? Of course not, but we've got to catch it," said Omri desperately. He felt wild and furious. How could Gillen have let the thing go? The perils that a rat presented to his little men simply turned his blood cold. And why, of all rooms in the house, did it have to choose his? He was tearing frantically at the edge of the carpet, trying to pull it back when his mother hiked him to his feet. "Omri, that carpet and those floorboards have been taken up once today. They've been put back once and everything tidied up. Rat or no rat, I'm not going through it again tonight. Now, get into bed and go to sleep." "But into bed," I said, "now." When she used that tone, there was no arguing with her. Omri got into bed, was kissed, and watched the light go off and the door close. As soon as her footsteps faded, he leaped up again, and so did Patrick. "Yeah. We must definitely stay awake all night. We mustn't close our eyes for a moment," said Omri. He was hunting through his ancient collection of book matches, for one of which his father had not cut the matches. He found one at last and lit the candle. They very gently moved Boone's dreadfully ill-looking face. Oh, nope, I skipped a line. They very gently moved Boone's bed out of hiding onto the bedside table, set the candle beside it, and sat one on each side, watching Boone's dreadfully ill-looking face. That makes more sense. The pink square of Band-Aid moved fractionally up and down as he breathed. You could hardly see it. It was like watching the long hand of a clock moving. Only the strongest concentration enabled them to detect the faint motion. "Hadn't we better move the seed box up here too?" whispered Patrick. In the moment when Little Bear had shot Boone, Omri had almost been angry enough to have fed him to the rat, but now his fury had cooled. He certainly didn't want anything awful to happen to him. "Yes, let's." Between them, they cleared a place at the table and lifted the seed box, with its longhouse fireplace and hitching posts, up out of reach of the prowling rodent. "Careful, don't frighten the horses." The horses, however, were getting used to being carried about, and hardly looked up from their munching of the leaf pile and grass cuttings. There was no sign of life from the longhouse. There followed a timeless period of just sitting there, silently, their eyes fixed on Boone's still figure in the flickering candlelight. Omri began to feel lightheaded after a bit. That waiting period of suspense often feels longer than it really is. So I can't even imagine the intensity of them fearing for Boone's life and being worried about that rat. Omri began to feel lightheaded. The candle flame went fuzzy, and Boone's body seemed to vibrate as he stared at it. At the very back of his mind, something else was nagging. Nagging. He didn't ask himself what this was because he had a superstitious feeling if he let his mind wander from Boone even for a minute, Boone would slip away into death. It was as if only Omri's will and Patrick's were keeping that tiny, fragile heart beating. Suddenly, though, a thought, like a landscape lit up by lightning, flashed at the forefront of Omri's brain. He sat up, his eyes wide open, and his breath held. Patrick! Patrick jumped. He'd been half asleep. What? The key. I know where it is. Where? Where? Right under my feet. It must have dropped through the floorboards when Dad opened them. There's nowhere else it could be. Oh my gosh, you're playing Pop the Passy. You've never done that before. Nathan used to do that all the time. Put it in his mouth and pull it out and make a popping sound. Oh, that's fun. Okay, you entertain yourself. Patrick gazed at him in admiration, but also in dismay. How are we supposed to get it? He whispered. We'll have to take up the carpet first. Maybe Dad didn't nail all the boards down. Moving very quietly, they managed to lift one corner of Omri's bed and kick the back edge of the carpet from underneath. Another bit was under the bedside table leg, and that was tricky, but they shifted it between them in the end. Carefully, they folded the corner of the carpet back on itself, exposing the boards. Omri then stuck his fingers down the narrow crack at the ends of the boards, one after another, testing to see if they could be lifted. Only one of them could. The rest were nailed down to the joists underneath. Making as little noise as possible, he hadn't heard his parents go to bed yet. Omri pried up the short end of board. A hole about 6 inches by 18 gaped in the light of the candle Patrick was holding. Even when he put the candle down the hole, they couldn't see much. We'll have to risk the bedside light, Omri said. They switched it on and carried it on its cord down to the hole. Kneeling on the floor, they peered into the depths. They could make out the dusty lath and plaster about a foot down, the top side of the ceiling of the room below, the room where Omri's parents were now sitting. We'll have to be dead quiet or they'll hear us. Dead quiet doing what? Asked Patrick. It's not there. You'd see it if it was. It must be under one of the nailed-down boards, said Omri despairingly. At that moment, they heard Little Bear calling them, and they stood up. He was standing outside the longhouse. His hair hung loose, his face and chest and arms were smeared with ashes, his feet were bare. Little Bear, what are you doing? Omri said, aghast at his appearance. Want fire. Want make dance. Call spirits. Make Boone live. Omri looked at him for a moment and felt an ache in his throat that reminded him painfully of his babyish days when he used to cry all the time, days he thought he'd left behind forever. Little Bear, dancing won't do any good. The spirits won't help. We need a doctor. To get the doctor, we need the key. Would you help us find it? Little Bear didn't move a muscle. I help. Gently, Omri picked him up. He knelt down on the floor and put his hand down in the hole. Patrick held the light. Omri opened his hand and Little Bear stood on it, looking around into the dusty dark tunnel stretching away under the floor. I think it's somewhere down there, Omri said quietly, on the other side of that wooden wall. You'll have to find a way through, a hole or a crack or something. We'll give you all the light we can, but it's bound to be awfully dark on the other side. Do you think you can do it? I go, said Little Bear immediately. Right. Start looking for a way through. Little Bear, a tiny, vulnerable figure, strode off through the dust into the darkness under the floor.